So we have a panel coming up here. Tom Perrault from Dunham & Company, the Vice President of Digital at Dunham & Company, is going to be leading the panel. And the folks who are going to be on the stage, they have tons of experience, a wealth of information, and you will want to stick around for it. So I'm going to invite Tom and the rest of the panelists up. Come on up, guys. Or just Tom, or all of them. All of them. And they'll take it away.
Thanks, buddy. Is this yours? Or you have it? Are we on? We're on. Can everybody hear my Britney Spears microphone? Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you, Justin, wherever you went. Thank you all for staying here to the glorious end this evening. Sure to be the cherry on the top of everything you've learned today. With me is Nate Smoyer, who is new products manager at Faithlife, and also the product manager at beaconads.com, a prominent ad network for Christian publishers. Also, Steve Werkmeister is director of marketing for Salem Web Network. Some of you have probably heard of that organization, as well as Christianity Today, where Walter Hegel is the manager of integrated media sales. And so we're just going to spend a few minutes talking about digital advertising, primarily from the perspective of those who are using it or thinking about using it, curious about what's working, what's not, what the trends are, where things are going. And we're just going to kick that around for just a few minutes and see what we come up with. And for those of you who think that advertising is the money changers in the temple segment of the day, that's not true. It's actually a very valuable, very important part of growing any organization or ministry, and I'll be happy to talk to you more about that. So without further ado, let me kick it off, guys. Question number one. When it comes to digital advertising, as someone who's involved in that, working with Christian ministries, Christian films, a lot of different types of organization, primarily providing those platforms for them to leverage to grow their audiences, their constituencies, their donor database, et cetera. What changes and trends are you seeing right now, anticipating? What are you really looking for that's going to be different in 2016? What's happening out there?
I'm just here so I don't get fined. No, one thing that I'm seeing that advertisers are coming to me with and really finding a lot of value with is sponsored content. So the idea of sponsored blog posts, sponsored tweets, Facebook posts. We see this is popular with the Kardashians, but it's actually really popular with a lot of book bloggers and people in the Bible study space. And so seeing that is something that advertisers are looking for more of, but also still trying to figure out exactly how that system works.
Now, how would you differentiate between sponsored content, native advertising, et cetera, all the different types of that?
Yeah, well, they can look exactly the same.
Yeah.
So the simplest way of sponsored or defining sponsored content is it looks like a blog post, it reads like a blog post, but it probably contains a disclaimer that I was compensated for this blog post. That's the best way to understand what sponsored content is. But there was a recent study I read that people actually don't sway away from that. That doesn't hurt their opinion of what the blogger is saying. And most bloggers, especially the ones who really stand by to protect their tribe and really keep on message for what they have their blog established for, won't accept contracts or products to blog about they actually don't believe in or use them themselves.
Yeah. And kind of to piggyback on what Nate was saying, we try to delineate it by a lot of our sponsored content is more aligning the brand with the actual article, and the information is going to convey something that is aligned with that brand or organization. Whereas the native advertising is a little bit more within the script of the page. Yeah. So you'll see articles that are relating to the other article. So that's kind of how we delineate it to a certain extent.
Go ahead, Walter.
And I would say too, when it comes to what am I most excited about in 2016, I guess I would differentiate between products and processes. So for products, for example, the native content, Mobile will continue to be very popular. I think increasing kinds of new media, for example, for us, expandable banners, video banners, those type of things I think will become more mainstream. But then there's also the processes idea. And by that, what I mean is, it seems like with the clients that I work with, there's more intentionality with their marketing than they've done before. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that, I mean, I think what you're seeing now is a lot more storytelling than ever before. And it's going to be so much more imperative that your clients and our clients start telling the actual story. So it's actually putting more thought into what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's no longer the age of slap an ad up and hope to get clicks.
Exactly.
It has to convey something that's going to be endearing to your audience.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that we were talking backstage where we hang out, before we come out here. And Steve, we were talking about how many campaigns we've run with Salem Web from Dunham and Company, and how much work you guys have to put into those campaigns now. Not just the work that we're doing, but the optimization of everything and the A/B testing and stuff that's every campaign requires so much more meticulous care now, because digital advertising, the key is, how can I do more of this with less? How can I get more out of this campaign than I did last time? So for your organizations, for your clients, anything come to mind aside from native advertising and content marketing, which I also love because it avoids what I call the ad blockalypse that's upon us. But in terms of other things that are really working well for your clients these days, what do those happen to be? What are people happy with?
Well, I think to your point, Tom, I think one of the things that we're seeing is the clients are challenging us more with higher expectations, as they should.
Yeah.
They're coming to us saying, okay, I need you to take what was working a certain way before and double that. So we're getting to do a lot more personalization within email. We're doing more optimized campaigns. We're thinking more than just how do I get this end user here, but once I get that end user to their site, how can I help them down that funnel path to actually nurture that lead? So that's kind of what I'm really seeing now.
And I would say too that I think our roles are changing. Whereas I've been with Christianity Today 17 years in the advertising, and the role is changing to being more consulting now than the sales part of it. I was talking to a client a couple weeks ago where, as I was explaining all the many different types of media options that are out there, I could tell there was just like a pause with her. And so I said, as I'm having this conversation with many of my clients, there's almost like a deer in the headlights kind of look. And she said, that's exactly how I'm feeling right now. So there's more of a need for us as salespeople to be consulting, to walk through with our clients the opportunities that are out there right now. Because there's so many.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and one of those you mentioned earlier was mobile. Obviously, that is a game changer that's having a lot of sort of a tectonic effect on a lot of different industries, a lot of different ways we conduct our businesses. From a mobile standpoint, anything in particular come to mind? Obviously, there's in-app, there's inside native app advertising, there's mobile web, there's all the optimization for email. What jumps out at that?
One thing that's not strictly mobile, but just real quick, everybody's listening. Raise your hand if you've ever been to a website and then gone to Facebook and seen that company show up on Facebook in your newsfeed. Everybody has experienced what remarketing is, and that's not exactly native content, but they're trying. The expectation now is, how do we put advertisements where people are going to be where they want to be? So if they want to be on the site for a few minutes, they don't want to be interrupted with a popover and then a fly, and then it comes up underneath and there's a video playing you can't find. If the ad's going to be important to them, and they leave, so the struggle for the advertiser is, how much of the line do I walk where it's really smart advertising, and when does it become creepy? And so that's actually the big challenge that I see in facing. This technology is amazing, and what we can all do with it. But there definitely is a line between being really smart and approaching the people that you actually have a chance of winning over, and then there's also the line that's creepy, where the ads just follow you everywhere you go with no real forethought behind them.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think to both your points, I think we had the clients who are really confused because there's so many different options and so many different things to choose from. And the reality is we're really confused too at times. You know, I mean, to be perfectly frank, I mean, and I try to be pretty transparent, which is why I'm not that great at sales. But we, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that's out there that's very complex. And so we're still now trying to get behind big data and trying to, how do we maximize that experience? How do I leverage that so I know when someone comes to my site whether I should show an ad on Facebook, or how do I tie that into an email campaign? Trying to do that in a sophisticated way that's thoughtful and makes sense. It's a lot harder than it seems to be. So it's still a challenge for us too.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, kind of with that next level marketing, if you will, that came to me about 3 weeks ago or so. I was talking to a client that for several years in a row, it was like an automatic, give me 100,000 banner impressions a month. But their creative never changed. They basically did the same thing with each ad placement. And I just think there's a need to realize that there are so many different media options out there, but not all of them are going to be beneficial for you. For example, there was another client of mine that they had decided to go mobile, but in their mobile ad, what they did is they had a significant amount of a lengthy form that you had to fill out. Well, they were very pleased with the responses that they had initially got with people opening up their banner, but they were really disappointed because the click-throughs of people following through and completing their form was like almost nothing, because nobody's going to spend time on your cell phone filling out line after line after line. So with all the media options that are out there, it's important to know why are you using a certain type of media? Who are you trying to reach? What's the goal? You know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue for our audience. If you were giving advice, just 2 or 3 takeaways, you know, on an elevator ride, if somebody was going to be doing some advertising to acquire new names, to drive traffic to something specifically, what are the 2 or 3 things that you most often recommend in addition to kind of what Walter's saying?
You could ask them, how much is your time worth per hour? How many hours of research you think you're going to spend figuring this out? Okay, here's my rate. And you could try, there you go. If you're going to spend 20 hours researching how to do something that ain't your job or your responsibilities, you're going to burn a lot of time. So I would say to somebody, do some initial research, but if it's not your specialty, it's not your core competency, then you need to seek out somebody that it is your core competency.
But if they were to approach you and say, we're interested in advertising,
okay.
and you're telling them basically as far as the do's and don'ts of making this work, what are some of the things that come to mind?
Have a call to action on your display ad.
I think a big thing for me is content is king. You have to have the right content. I mean, you have to, no longer can you, again, get back to just kind of faking your way through it. I think you have to have a very thoughtful, creative plan in place when you're going to do something. And you have to have a series laid out of knowing exactly what you're doing, whether it's going to be an email campaign where you're asking for that lead, and whether that's going to be a mobile environment versus a desktop environment. It's a very different look. So you have to have a complete core plan on how you're going to execute that.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is be open to dabbling. If something is working for you, I would encourage you just to continue to stay with that. But if there's some additional marketing dollars that you have where something just is not working at all, is try different media options. Another thing I would say is just to be very deliberate, again, on who are you trying to reach, how are you trying to reach them. Test different media, subject lines, different A/B splits with different creative, and then measure those responses and make adjustments where necessary. So really be on top of a thoughtful kind of marketing effort.
And along those lines, I feel like, again, you shouldn't, it is a very complex world, so take, small bites at a time. Have a core focus, kind of your point too. I mean, know what you're wanting to accomplish. There's so much, you're inundated with so much information and you want to try everything. Just try one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Small test. Walter's point is an excellent idea.
Yeah, the options are unlimited. There's a website called thalamus.co, which is a user-curated database of networks, agencies, pricing models. You can see everything top to bottom there, and if you want to get a glimpse of how big it is, it's not even complete yet, and it'll show you how many things to choose from. But trying to master all these things all at once is overwhelming, so keeping things simple, starting out in a small piece, find a little success, and then scale to the point it doesn't make any sense.
Good. What about social media? To what extent is that sort of overlapping with your worlds, and where are you seeing success and results there?
Social media for us is a great thing and it's a terrible thing at the same time. So it's kind of like oil for us because we depend on it so much, and when it's running scarce, you're kind of panicking. Frankly, some of our sites, a lot of the traffic comes from our social media efforts. So we're utilizing that to the best of our advantage. Right now we have a great team who uses that. The challenge is how do you sustain something that's really out of your hands? So we're trying to look at alternative. One of the big things for this year is looking at alternative traffic sources besides Facebook. But it's definitely it's a great source for us for lead generation. It's an excellent source right now for me when I'm actually trying to grow my email database. It's a perfect source for that. But in the back of our heads, we're trying to look for alternative means as well.
Yeah, and I would say for Christianity Today, from an advertising perspective, I think we're just starting to get where the numbers are getting to where they're significant enough to really compete against the many different options we have, whether mobile, newsletters, e-blasts, etc. But I know increasingly our editors, that side of the world, is really relying on social media in kind of a content marketing kind of way, just to get that product out there, because that's another consideration, is that we have friends of the ministry. I'm sure all of our organizations, our followers, our fans, our subscribers, our viewers, our readers, etc. But in this kind of digital world that we're in right now, you never know who's going to come to your website, who's going to find you out there, and you want to be ready for them. So with our editors and just dabbling articles from our publication out there and our resources, it's a way just to let people know of us who may not be. And I think that's probably applicable for all of our organizations, is just be aware that even though you have that core followers, there's another whole group of people out there that you're not aware of that might be really ready for your organization and want to connect with you.
Yeah, and this is an area where I feel really strongly. I've been using social, it's been like 15 years and working in public projects, and it's how I got my start in advertising, was from the social angle, not banner display angles. But even if you don't even plan on doing any social advertising because maybe that's intimidating, the one thing you should learn about is the Facebook audience pixel. Put that on your website. I just used it to build up a buyer persona for one of the SaaS products that I manage, and we're using that to drive the content in our explainer video, and then we're going to take that video and put that to market and get that in front of people, and then building our display banner ads themed in continuity with that video. So I'm not even using Facebook ads here. I'm actually just using Facebook's audience pixel to tell me who's coming to my website, how many of them are married, and who drives a minivan or pickup truck. And those are things that are important to me so I can make the right decisions on my messaging.
Good. Excellent. Steve, talking about using Facebook for lead generation, we do that a lot as well, and it is remarkably efficient and effective, and the targeting is obviously incredible. For when it comes to something like Google AdWords, or if somebody has a Google Ad Grants arrangement, what are some of the key things, looking at it from a marketing standpoint as opposed to a sales standpoint? What are some of the key things that are happening or going on these days?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot's happening on the AdWords side too, and what they're doing there. I mean, they actually just made an announcement today that the right-hand rail ads are going to potentially go away. So it's going to be a lot different in how we, for us and how we do things. And we look at it. So when we actually have, from a marketing perspective, I have a healthy portion of my budget that goes to Google AdWords and search and display campaigns. We do a little bit of Bing, and then we do Facebook, and those are the three major drivers for our email growth and to a certain extent traffic. And the big thing for me right now is measuring that, because for our perspective, we're getting anywhere from half to a third of the cost for a social media email address than we are through AdWords. So we're trying to figure out which one's more valuable, and that's really the kind of the thing. There's the attribution and figuring out where you should be pushing your money towards. When I look at it, I think Facebook does a great job because it's kind of that social conscious of people where they see, this is my news feed and I'm going to click on this because it seems enticing to me. But search still has the great ability of knowing the intent of the user. I mean, if a user searches for a certain thing and then you're showing them results, they're very likely to be very good source. So that's kind of the back of our heads too when we're doing our campaigns.
Yeah, and with AdWords, I think this is where easily, if a user is ever going to get overwhelmed and confused quickly, is going to be in AdWords. So you start looping in Tag Manager. But I'll tell you, if you can figure out Tag Manager on your site and understand the power in remarketing that it offers, then you'll really benefit from that. But this is again going back to understanding, keeping things simple. You want to take your organization to the next level. You get the grant from Google to promote your church, and it is a sizable amount. One mistake I've seen with the church that I was working with in San Diego is somebody set it up and never optimized it. They were spending it was something like $1,000 a month on AdWords, but they had this 90% surplus just sitting going unused, and then the services they had available, the things they were doing for the community, deserved to be talked about because they were really delivering value. So the people searching for it couldn't find it. So it's absolutely worth your while to work with someone who understands this, has a competency. Otherwise, you're going to underspend and miss out on the potentials, or you're going to overspend in your own time.
That's a great point. I mean, AdWords can be incredibly complex for some kind of a novice person going in. Whereas Facebook's a lot, honestly, in my opinion, a lot easier to dabble in. They don't have as many bells and whistles, but they do to kind of, and Nate, your point earlier, they have a lot more, at times more insight into the end user. So it's actually can be a very powerful product.
And Nate, you can speak also sort of from the ad network perspective, which might be helpful for everyone to kind of get an overall context of how that's different and what's maybe what some of the benefits are for going that route as far as their advertising.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a quick comparison here. There's marketplaces and networks here. Now, the traditional networks say, hey there, blogger, put this ad zone on your sidebar, and what we sell, you display. Beacon Ads is a little different than that, in that it's a marketplace where all the bloggers who sign up own the inventory. They determine the size, the placement, and the price. They also determine what sells on their site because every advertiser is coming to our platform individually. So it's known as a direct buy, and the way that is playing right now is we don't have a lot of ministries taking advantage of something like that unless it's something that some of the websites that we have are particular ministries already, so some of our publishers are. But I see more of that's in the book space, especially with bloggers and personalities being tied to specific books. That's where I see that being very successful.
And in general, looking at a much larger scale, the programmatic environment, we talked briefly about remarketing, but there's so much pinpoint accuracy and persona building and lookalike audiences and obviously Facebook's Atlas endeavors, et cetera. What are you guys seeing or hearing or thinking about kind of what's happening in the programmatic world that's good news, primarily good news for everybody here?
It works while you sleep.
Yeah, and it can be incredibly affordable.
Yeah.
To be transparent on this, it can be a really valuable tool to reach a wide-reaching audience versus going sometimes the direct route.
Right.
There's scenarios where the direct route makes a lot more sense because you have a little more control over the message. You know exactly where the placements are going to be. But in terms of scalability, it gives you that scalability. It does work while you sleep, and so it's definitely something that could be really, really good.
Yeah, Christianity Today, we work with Beacon,
Mm-hmm.
and but I'm on kind of like the sales side of things. So on the programmatic side, I like to be involved with the marketing, the marketers. So I'm kind of on the other side of that, even though I know we value that relationship as well.
Yeah. Just help us understand what would a typical campaign, goals and execution sort of look like. So if it's a programmatic campaign and you're doing it's through an exchange or ad networks and you've got your profile that you built with a pixel, et cetera. What's a campaign like that for somebody like you guys look like?
Okay, I'll take this. I mean, well, as an organization, so I also lead the buying of advertising. I don't just sell it. As an organization, we set a minimum. So we have an understanding that there is a fixed cost into planning any campaign. So we set a minimum of what we're going to spend to make it worthwhile. If that campaign is not worth that minimum spend, then we're not doing that campaign. And that's just really understanding your organizational goals and good traction or channel management. But as far as framing out those campaigns, we focus a lot on our advertising to be early introduction or lead generation and not directly to the sale. So, the type of metrics that we're going to be concerned about is conversion to email, submission, our click-through rates, and then cost per click. And that really just gives us an idea of what are we really spending here. Other metrics after the email submission is going to be something along the lines of what is our conversion to sign up for actually, going through with a purchase or starting a free trial. And last year I made a dedication to myself basically to finally learn math. It was something I skipped in school. I had no interest in being a scientist or anything along those lines. And I picked up the book, How to Not Be Wrong, The Power of Mathematical Thinking. And that's really just kind of totally changed how I view a lot of this. And there is some just basic math you've got to do in framing things out, and then you get to the creative part.
Really glad I asked that question. Good stuff. We talked about ad blocking very, very, very briefly. Obviously, as consumers, that's going to be, we'll be more and more acutely aware of kind of that struggle, which I kind of liken to, King Kong and Godzilla destroying Tokyo, and we're all running away toward trying to escape downtown, because you've got Apple and Google, in this particular case, basically taking swings at each other. But there are other, obviously, huge players involved too. And that's affecting the way publishers make money. It's affecting the way we have generally assumed the commercial exchange of content to be set up for a very, very long time. Certainly on the internet, since Wired Magazine introduced the first banner ad back in like 94, 96. But from the standpoint of ad blocking, now there's 200 million users worldwide who are blocking ads on their computers or their mobile devices. What's that, what are you seeing, what are you hearing, what's that look like? Does it keep anyone up at night at this point?
For me, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I mean, depending on who you're asking.
Yes,
for me,
worse
so just to clarify, for in terms of the advertising side on our end, ad blocking is going to become a lot more prevalent for the consumer to be able to use. I think that's going to be the quick short of it. But at the same token, Google is definitely incented to try to make this work out. Yep. So you kind of mentioned the Apple-Google kind of tension there. Knowing that Google has such a huge presence, we're kind of feeling like they're going to figure it out. So we're not sleeping at night. We're worried about it. But it's something that we definitely recognize, and that also kind of goes along to the direct piece too. So that's why our direct sales force is really incredibly a great product to have still, because we can guarantee that inventory being viewable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say the same with Christianity Today. I mean, we're aware of it, especially as it's. I mean, so much. There's been so much press at the end of 2015 and moving forward into 2016, but we haven't really been negatively impacted about that as far as our impressions and what they have been historically. So it's one of those things that we're just having to kind of just keep an eye on, but where it goes, it's another story.
Yeah, because we may end up having different relationships with consumers when it's all said and done as media purveyors. We're just not sure what that's going to look like.
But one of the things too, it goes back to the storytelling that we were talking about, or I was talking about at the beginning. I think that, again, if you have great content and you can tell a story that's convincing and conveying what your message is about, and truly the end user finds it relevant, that's where you don't need ads. You need a message. So I think that's going to be the leap that a lot of folks are going to.
For me, just kind of just thinking about the ad blocker concern, though, that's out there, the threat that's out there. Another thing that I guess comes to my mind regarding just concerns is just how where you have different kinds of media and wanting to just kind of jump on things right away without giving much thought to how well you're doing that, how much quality you're doing that. And for example, what I mean is that just like with mobile devices, getting back into that, you know, it's one thing to have a presence on a desktop and seeing that, but it doesn't translate to having that same presence in a mobile format if you don't do anything. I mean, this last fall, I had taken about 200 plus accounts and just looked on my mobile device and put their URL in and just saw what they looked like. And out of a 1 to 10 rating, 10 being the best, out of those 200 plus accounts, there was probably about a little over 5.5 rating that I would give those. There was a lot of them that were really good, but there were several of them. All they did is they took what was on the web, you know, on the desktop, and put it onto their, you know, left it in their mobile device, and it doesn't look good at all. So if you have organizations that are checking you out, and they come to your mobile device, which a growing amount of people are, and they see very small font, it's very hard to navigate around, that's a terrible first impression, and you really want to, I think, address that. That's a high priority, I think.
Yeah, the research we've done with Dunham and Company, obviously, there's still a majority of nonprofits are not optimizing for mobile. Sometimes in their giving forms, in their email communication. A recent study released last week from Email Marketing Daily said that 32% of professional marketers are not optimizing for mobile, which means more than half of the people you're sending your email to, it's hard to either read or respond, and that's what we call a really big miss, basically. And it's like, I'm thinking, what year is it? How are we not optimizing for mobile at this point? In fact, I just read that only 32% of emails were even read on a desktop device in 2015. So if you combine tablet and phones, et cetera, you really got to think desktop second or third when you're thinking, putting together a campaign and designing things. So.
And that's exactly one of the tenets we have for this year. It's mobile first.
Yeah.
So when we look at everything, and not to exactly the point, but almost to the point of, why don't you get out your phone and look at it first before you even do anything with your desktop, you know, when you're thinking about campaigns, because our audience is quickly gravitating towards mobile devices.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Anything else, guys? Anything to add?
I mean, I'm going to be here all week. I'd love to meet with people in the audience here. You can tweet me at Nate Smoyer, and I'll give you more book suggestions. And then I put together a list of tools I think are helpful for advertisers at natesmoyer.com/advertising, and you can get that for free.
Excellent. Good. Well, I was afraid when we got out here that this would resemble the end of a battle scene in Braveheart or something, just bodies everywhere, but everybody hung in there and stayed conscious, which is amazing because it's, but I think thanks guys for being here and for making your contributions on these questions. And it's a moving target, everything keeps changing, so if we're here again next year, we'll invariably be talking about something else. So, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.